All right, here we are. There are only two remaining teams from Northeast Indiana still alive in the postseason. It's already week 14. He's Justin Kenny of Optimum Performance Sports. And Justin, before we get into the two matchups this week, what's your big takeaway from last week? Because we had a ton of teams alive. I wouldn't say a ton. We had a good number of teams alive.
Yeah.
Regionals, only two make it through, and you're talking about a team that's 45 minutes north, essentially, of Fort Wayne, depending on where you are at Eastside, and about a half hour, 45 minutes south when you're talking about Adams Central. Not a lot of Fort Wayne love. We run into a buzzsaw in some of these larger divisions. What's your big takeaway after we've got regionals in the rear view?
Well, I look at what happened last week, Glenn, as a microcosm of what has happened over the last 10 years in this area in high school football. And that is our big class teams cannot break through the barrier that is football in 2021 in this state. And in the last 10 years, we've had two teams, both Snyder teams, advance to the state championship in 5A or 6A. That was just 5A. And we still have not had a team in 6A get past the regional. So I think it's once again showing just how behind this area is. And the SAC in particular, sticking to their 9-game conference schedule, not allowing teams to play out of the area in the regular season. Conversely, that trickles down to teams like Leo and Norwell that can't challenge themselves against city schools in the regular season. We saw it bite Leo, and I think that really hurt Norwell as well. I'm not saying that's the end-all, be-all, solution to the issue, but I think it definitely would educate these teams on where their level of play needs to be come this level of the postseason.
To play devil's advocate there, when you're looking at 6A, though, you've got some 4,500 student schools, Carmel got like 5,000, 5,200 schools.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a huge gap. There's as huge a gap between Snyder and Adams Central as there is between Snyder and Carmel in terms of attendance numbers. How do you fix that program? Is there a 7A? I mean, like what do you do? Because the difference between, especially in a game of football where depth is a big thing, playing guys both ways is a big thing, how do you keep a school that's got 2,000 kids on the same level with a school that's got 5,000 kids?
Well, it's difficult, and some people would say impossible, and I get it. But at the same time, you're playing a Westfield team that it's big, but it's not Warren Central. It's not Ben Davis. And, we're seeing teams right now. I'm not sure if Carroll or Homestead could beat, when you look at the region, Maryville, you look at Valparaiso, you look at Penn this year. So, I don't have the magic answer to say this is what gets Carroll and Homestead and even Snyder over the top. I'm just saying the landscape of high school football in this state has changed, and SAC has not changed along with it.
Now, the one thing the SAC has done is they've implemented a rotating schedule every other year. They change it up. How do you think that benefit? I mean, is that a step in the right direction? If you think
it's a step, I don't know if it's in the right direction. You still have 9 conference games, and I understand when you look at Concordia and Bishop Luers, those are the teams that I think are perfect for the SAC because they get to punch above their weight throughout the year. And they're like, no, we don't want to change anything because we don't have to travel anywhere for matchups in terms of stuff that's going to make us better. But you look at the top end and you look at Carroll and Homestead, and it's playing Wayne and Southside and Northrop and Northside every year, helping them. And conversely, are those teams being helped by playing up? Southside hasn't beaten Snyder since 2009. Northside has never beaten Homestead. So these games, why are we playing them when it's not helping anybody, and it could help the top class teams playing out of the league? And conversely, it could help the bottom, feeders of this league kind of get some momentum and play some teams that they have a chance to beat.
Speaking of having a chance to beat somebody pretty good, boy, it has not been an easy row to hoe if you're the East Side Blazers, and it doesn't get easier this week. I mean, if they make it to Lucas Oil Stadium, no one can say they ease their way in. You're talking about Luers, you're talking about Eastbrook, and now you've got Andrane at your place. I mean, that is quite a gauntlet to go through. In some ways, this will be one of the – if you look at those three programs, some could say this is one of the, if not the toughest matchup this week because of the competition that Andrane has played. I mean, they've got 3 losses, but one's to a team in Michigan, one's to Merrillville, and one's to Lowell. I mean, those are teams that were all alive last week, at least in the state of Indiana. How do you see this game playing going forward? Eastside's obviously playing some great football to knock off the opponents they have thus far.
It's another huge challenge for Eastside, and the crazy thing is these aren't three like-minded teams they've had to prepare for. This is completely different between Bishop Luers, being spread, and then you pack it all in with Eastbrook, and then Andrean likes to do a little bit of both. So with the 59ers, it starts with their quarterback and Scott Ballantyne. He's a phenomenal player. He can throw, he can facilitate the offense, and Andrean's going to be noticeably bigger than a lot of the teams that Eastside has played. But I think they're prepared well over their last two opponents. The one thing you can say about facing a gauntlet, if you're Eastside, is you don't have to turn it up for a particular game at this level. You've had to be on the last 2 weeks, and it continues into this weekend. So Andrean's very tough, battle-tested, up from the Northwest. But at this point, particularly with Eastside being at home, once again, it comes back to until somebody stops Laban Davis, I don't think you can bet against the Blazers.
Never have to get ready if you're always ready. That's the Blazers right now at this time of the season. They are always ready because they've always got something going on. One of the things that I've seen trend-wise in these last couple of games for Eastside, they score first, and that allows them to take control of the game and play at their pace. How critical is it for them against this Andrean team to get on the scoreboard first again? Because, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, I think everybody would like to score first, in a perfect world. But how critical is that in the way that they execute the rest of the game? Because it was critical when you talk about, the Bishop Luers game, how they essentially controlled that game from the outset.
Well, it's an offense that, while it scores on big plays, is predicated on getting those 3, 4, 5 yards of play, right? And I think it's an offense that you look at and say, how would this work if this team was a couple scores behind in the second half? And we haven't had to see that yet. So it's almost keeping Eastside out of being uncomfortable if, they're able to score first and take the lead and play from ahead, because I'm really not sure if this is a team built to come from multiple scores behind in the fourth quarter and just by design, but then again, every little run can break for a big one, whether it's Laban Davis, whether it's Dax Holman, it doesn't matter. But I feel like getting ahead early will be huge, particularly at home with that crowd really, really engaged in the first ever semi-state game in program history.
This is a odd question to ask, but how has Laban Davis been able to do it? Like, going in, they're going to try and take him away, maybe have a guy spy him. I mean, he's a guy that has got the target on his back every game, and yet every game in the playoffs, he seems to step it up a level. I mean, what can you say about the way he's approached this game? I don't think we've seen this kind of quarterback play, a senior having this type of play at the quarterback position, different types of quarterbacks. But since Peter Morrison, Concordia, when he led Concordia to the state title, where it just seemed like he did everything right all the time, even though they were game planning to stop him.
Well, I think it starts for Eastside up front. They have one offensive lineman that's a senior that has missed one snap his entire career, 4-year starter. They have another that's a 3-year starter that has started every single snap in 3 years. So continuity is key up front. The other part of that line is inexperience, but they've really grown well. And we've all seen Laban Davis seemingly contained and get loose. And even if it's for an extra yard or two, the kid never goes down on first contact. He's always falling forward. And, those are cliches, but it's true. And the difference between, moving the chains and having to punt can be 1 or 2 yards of play. And I think that's key for Eastside and how they do things is, they have much of a push up front, and Laban Davis is so slippery that he's able to get the yardage needed to continue to move those chains.
Final question before we move on to Adams Central. If there's one key for this game, what do you think it is for Eastside versus Andrean Friday night in Butler?
Matching the physicality of Andrean, because we saw teams last week that weren't able to match the physicality of their opponents, whether it be Carroll, whether it be Dwenger, whether it be Norwell. So, that goes for Bishop Luers 2 weeks ago against Eastside. So that's going to be the huge thing for the Blazers. Don't let the moment be too big. Again, first ever semi-state game in program history. So if they come out and execute like they have throughout these playoffs, I like East Side in this one.
All right, let's move on to 1A. You got Adams Central on the road. They're going to be taking on North Judson. I believe that's an 8 o'clock kick our time. If I take a look at so it's going to be a late night for Jets fans, especially if they're traveling back to Monroe, but they would like to be traveling back in style with a semi-state title. When you take a look at this Adams Central team, I mean, I thought the game against South Adams last week was going to be a little bit closer. South Adams had Warner back. They seem to be playing better football than they were when they met in week 6 of the regular season, but it was the same gap, a 41-point gap. This one 41-0. The other one was 48-7. What does that tell you about this Adams Central team, if anything, as we enter semi-state this week?
It continues to be that if Adams Central shows up, locked in, ready to go, they're not beatable in the North, basically, in 1A. We've all looked at it and said, okay, Adams Central Lutheran, that's the battle for the state championship if nobody has a letdown, and so far so good. Neither has had a letdown. So when you look at how North Judson matches up, I don't really like it at all for them, to be honest. It's not a dominant team offensively, not a dominant team defensively. Great job getting to semi-state, but when you try to compare Adams Central to North Judson, I don't see a lot of advantages here for the Blue Jays other than hosting.
It's funny that you say that, because I was looking through their stats as well, and I was like, I kept refreshing. I was like, are these the full season stats? Like, this far, like I figured there would be a dominant player on the offense. I mean, they have one receiver that's got about half their receiving yards. I didn't think I saw anybody over 1,000 yards rushing. I was just like, okay, yeah. Like maybe it's just a sum of the parts type of thing, where that is seemingly what works for North Judson. But with Adams Central, I mean, I guess one of the things you want to do is avoid a letdown, but it just seems like this is such a senior-laden group and an experienced group that isn't really going to be much of an issue for Michael Mosier to keep these guys focused. They seem to be, blinders on, ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, tunnel vision for sure. The trap game, so to speak, from last year and last week, and remembering 2 years ago when South Adams was that team with state aspirations, and Adams Central went in and beat them 19-7 in the regional, and did we think that something like that could happen last Friday? And it was put to bed pretty quick. I mean, Adams Central dominated that game on both sides of the ball. So this is a game too that I'm looking at and say, you want to give North Judson a chance, you really do, particularly if you're a North Judson fan. But it's very tough to find an angle on where the Blue Jays can have an advantage in this one. So as long as the bus doesn't break down, as long as AC doesn't already have visions of a state championship showdown with Lutheran, I think this is the Flying Jets game, and I think it's by a considerable margin.
I don't want to put the cart in front of the horse in front of the cart in front of the horse. That's what I'm saying. You mentioned the Lutheran game. Can you look ahead at all if you're Adams Central this week and maybe implement some things in practice that you might need during Thanksgiving week? Because let's face it, Thanksgiving week is a big distraction week.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. School's in, school's out. You've got the Thanksgiving holiday. You have a non-traditional week. Maybe you're playing on Saturday. Maybe you're playing on Friday, in the early afternoon. Like, it's a much different ball game. So is there anything you can do this week? Maybe not say this is preparing for Lutheran, but get your team a little bit prepared to utilize some of the schemes that you might be using next week. I mean, is that even a wise use of time, considering what a wild week Thanksgiving week can be?
Yeah. No, I feel like it's a good idea, particularly if you don't have to change anything drastic from your North Judson game plan. Maybe it's just a couple different wrinkles based on what Lutheran does, or scouting ahead, and maybe have your defense, hey, this is what we need to look for this Friday, even though knowing that it's something that's going to be a bigger presence at the state championship game potentially. And two, the added wrinkle of waiting for the IHSAA to announce when you play is you cannot go into Friday or even this week and say, okay, we win, I know we play Saturday, or I know we play Friday. You're still waiting until Friday night at the earliest, Saturday morning at the latest, to find out if you're playing Friday or Saturday. And that Friday first game sneaks up on you pretty darn quick in the Thanksgiving week. So yeah, I absolutely feel like maybe there's definitely two eyes on North Judson, but maybe one of those is kind of looking ahead a little bit.
Final question as we wrap up this week. What are you most looking forward to about this Friday? I mean, I think a lot of people had these teams penciled in to make long postseason runs. Eastside, if they could get by Lures, I think that was what people thought could happen. They maybe could make a run at state. Same thing with Adams Central. I mean, we're kind of where we thought we might be with both of these teams in a certain degree.
Well, yeah, I think we're as expected with Adams Central. Maybe we expected Bishop Lures to be here instead of Eastside, but we felt, whoever won that game between the two had a good shot to be in this position. I feel like it's just as much who's not here as it is who's here. Once again, 1A and 2A dominating it. We don't have a 6A team in semi-state. We've never had a 6A team in semi-state. 5A, Bishop Dwenger was playing up. So I think, you can't fault them very much for that Zionsville loss, I don't think, because they're a 4A team. But by and large, no SAC teams here, no NE8 teams here.
Mm-hmm.
It commands so much of the attention during the regular season, and for good reason. The majority of our top teams are in those two conferences. Yet here we are with an ACAC team and a Northeast Corner Conference team, the lone representatives for the area on Friday night. I don't want to say it's fitting, but it's kind of interesting knowing that, those are our only two conferences still alive.
I would have pegged Leo to be here at this point if you'd asked me at the beginning of the season. But such is the life of someone who tries to predict what 14 and 18-year-olds are going to do. All right. All right, my man. I appreciate the time, and we'll talk to you next week when hopefully we've got two teams going down to Indianapolis. That would be awesome.
Let's do it, buddy.
All right. That's Justin Kenny. I'm Glenn Marini, and we'll see you next week on Inside the Zone.